So there, do you have a Nutone doorbell like this? Well, you might be able to tell by the appearance of the doorbell from being installed. It's really just a simple push button, which in my case, this doorbell has been in use for 30 years. I believe it's original to the house and was probably installed 50 years ago or more. I never really wanted to play with these things because the house was sided and removing the doorbell required the question as to whether the wires that feed this doorbell, there's two on the back that mount on those screw posts there, whether or not the wiring would permit me to pull this doorbell out far enough that I could release it. It was tight. What I found is that I think there was some shorting of the wire against a metal fascia, kind of a metal trim I should say, behind it. It was aluminum trim, and of course aluminum will conduct electricity. I'm not quite certain of that. It's possible that the wires were interfering with each other in here because they were skinned back far enough for that to happen, but you really don't know if you can't tell what position they were in when they were in place. For now, I'm assuming that it may have been a little bit of both, but the doorbell started to act erratically. So the other thing I noticed about it was in the past, the button that's on there would actually light up at night. There's a bulb, and that wasn't working anymore. So believe it or not, I went out on the internet and found that you can still buy the very same bulbs that go with this doorbell. There's still one in this package, and that's a close-up view of it. And I have checked the one that I've installed. I'm sorry that I didn't do the video and show you that, but I think this is as good as any anyway. The bulb is similar to what those grain of wheat bulbs look like. They're real tiny. I can't even get a handle on it. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm back. These bulbs are similar to the bulbs you might put in a Maglite flashlight. For those of you who remember what those are, they're slightly bigger. This one was burned out. I used a continuity meter to check it, and I could also tell by using a fairly powerful magnifying glass that the filament inside here is just burned off. You can see it kind of looks black at the top. So no surprise, after so many years this doorbell just doesn't have a light anymore, and I kind of like that. So I went ahead and I bought the replacement bulb, and when I looked at it as it sits in here, and I'm trying to focus this for you, the bulb just sits in place between those two fingers. They are part of the copper conductivity in this doorbell, and you're just going to pull the bulb out and then push in the replacement. You have to take the wires that are on this bulb and you have to bend them back along the side like I did just there, if you can see that, and you have to have them at 180 degrees of placement, one on one side, one on the other, so that when they're pushed into this socket, like I say, it's pushed in. Very simple. The problem is just the effort to keep a grip on the bulb when you do that. And I suppose you could use a tiny needle nose pliers, but I didn't want to do that. Maybe a good tweezers or something would help you too, but you're just going to push that back in here. What I did is you can release these screws, and then with these tangs that are on here, just pushing them back, you can remove these two plates that form the opposite poles for the wiring, and you can clean those up. As you can see, they're fairly shiny at the contact points, and that's at the ends because I wanted to do that. I thought it probably would help this. I have very fine sandpaper here. It's 400 sandpaper. I had a piece over here somewhere, but if you do have access to that kind of sandpaper, you might want to buff up the area that makes contact with the bulb. So really that's the only repair that I had to make. I'm presuming the bulb will be fine. It did check resistance wise, and it's a matter of just hooking the wires back up on these posts and tightening those, and the mounting screws, which in my case are nails. The siding people used a couple of long, very small aluminum nails to anchor this thing, and then they kind of caulked around the sides and the top, which is nice. I'll probably do the same, and I'll put this back on the door jamb, and I should say the facing of the door, and it should be fine. Now what I did have to do is it did fail in one way, and that is because these two opposite pole conductors, one of them just came right off the plastic studs that are on here on this plastic push button, and in other words it somewhat broke. Well, what I did in this case is first I checked to see that it still works, and then I went ahead and I used JB Weld to remount these on here, cleaned up the surfaces, and it's very firm. It's really good. And I checked to make sure that this is still in good shape, and it is. If you can understand how this will work, you're going to put this back over the bulb, and when you push this button, it collapses the outer conductor and makes contact with the opposite one, which is how the doorbell works. And it's a very simple mechanical application, and because of that, there's really very little that can go wrong with it. It's really kind of a long-lasting. I don't say it's well built, but let's just say it'll work for a long time like that. And you really can't install this until you get the base back in place. I guess you can, but you have to put the mounting screws or nails or however you do it through these holes, and to do that this will just fall out anyway. So the actual finish to this is to put the cover back on, and in my case it really doesn't fit that tight, but you can also possibly pinch the end on it. This one's a little bit bent outward, and like I said, since they did caulk around the doorbell, it really never came loose. It was always in good shape. So the finished product looks like this, and then I'm pretty much done. There really isn't much to it, really. There's just those pieces, and when it's put together, that's what it looks like. So if you have a bell that looks somewhat like this, you might realize that in order to get this apart, you have to pull this cover off, because you have to get access to the mounting screws and nails, whatever is used in the case, that are in here. I intend to try to minimize any exposure of the conductors to each other, because it is a question as to how the wiring goes in here, that you could have it short against each other if you do. In my case, there's a limited amount of wire to work with, but it should be easy to put it back on these posts and tighten those. And that's really all there is to it, folks. So good luck with your doorbell. If you have one that the light bulb doesn't work, usually, at least with Nutone, it isn't really that big of a job, and you can still buy these. I bought this replacement pack of 2 bulbs on Amazon, and I'm happy I did so, because I've got a back door button that's the same as this, and it needs to be fixed as well. Bye now.